Testing, testing, testing. If you heard me coughing, forgive me. Okay, let's get started. Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, King Clifford Jefferson, ascendant of Godfrey, the fifth Caliban Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know here at the Third Temple English Church of England as the Christ. All right? Jesus Christ or the Christ. It is December 10th, 2024, which is equivalent to the birth year 2974. I greet you in the name of my ancestors, our predecessors. I greet you in the name of our Christ, King Edgar the Peaceful. I greet you in the name of his descendants. I greet you in the name of us, the heirs of our descendants, King Edgar the Peaceful, and all those who preceded him. This lesson today is called The Origin of Prayer of Our Lord Christ from the English Benedictine Reform. Once again, Origins of Prayer of Our Lord Christ from the English Benedictine Reform. Very important that you pay attention to the information that's going to be given to you today, because it's clear a lot of you's conception about this person identified as Christ. Okay, and letting you know that I am the reincarnation of this Christ-like entity descended down from the Plantagenet crown under Godfrey the fifth Caliban Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started with this marvelous lesson. As always, I give you an update on the matters at hand dealing with the courts. The case has been filed with the Chancery Court on December 3rd um, of this year, and it's been sent out by way of certified mail to the actual state and a land title insurance company, as well as in the criminal matter. I had the pre-arraignment, what is it called? Post-indictment arraignment yesterday, and my presentment was the brief that I submitted on behalf of motion to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction based upon failure to state a claim in lieu of the actual charges uh, are based upon an unconstitutional statute which warrants lack of jurisdiction, which is grounds for dismissal. Um, the counsel that are defending me, they had a problem with presenting the brief as a result of it originating from common law. So I had them admit to me that this, in fact, system in which they were operating was not which was that established by the common law, which is the conflict of law. Okay, it's contrary to law, and I let them know that I had an obligation not to you or the state, but to the common law, because without the common law, we as English nationals have no defense at all. Okay, and that was perfectly understood. So they gave me an alternative to take a diversionary program, but allows me to have the case dismissed. And I told them the only way I agree to that is that there's nothing binding me in regards to some type of contractual agreement in lieu of the so-called pre what we call diversionary application. All right. So, and if there is, based upon the agreement with the prosecution was there, and they had no objections to the presentment of the diversionary program, which is not the program that involves a plea. All right. So I made sure that I would not be wavering in my stance on defending that common law. So if you guys want to dismiss it on your own by whatever program that you establish for those who fit the criteria of the program, so be it. But my stance is defending the common law. And I think it would be better to uh, take the program because the matter is already being heard in the Chancery Court, which is the proper jurisdiction for the matter to be heard, which was actually received on the day in question, all right, which was December 9th. Okay, so we looking real good, y'all. So keep me in prayer. Because that's what you should do. All right, we are obligated to maintain the prayer that was created by our ancestors that has now been misinterpreted by other people. Are adopting the prayer, which is known by the formal name, the Lord's Prayer. So with that, let's get started with this marvelous lesson. All right, I give honor to my Queen Sister Galveston from the House of Galveston. I give honor to all those who are Christians because one thing that I promised in my prior life on this plane of existence, in lieu of the Holy Trinity, which we'll go over in a second, which I want to give honor to Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont in regards to reiterating that obligation in lieu of the promise that King Edgar had, i.e., me, in my prior life, to the people, all right, which is protected under the common law. And he emphasized how important the church was, the architectural structure, as well as the timeline in which they originated, because there's no way possibly for such historical monuments to be built at the time of when the so-called discovery period happened here in what we call North America. But yet we still have these monumental historical monuments that exist. All right. At that time, they were warring, invading, conquering and laying waste to that which was already present in this here in this country. And the detailed information that was presented by Archbishop Belmont, based upon synopsis given by what was the gentleman's name, John Reevy or something to that effect. Those who are familiar with Archbishop's platform associated with the Third English Church of England, please make your way over there to check that out because that's a beautiful um, uh, lesson that he gave. And in particular, I want to talk about another historical church, which is the Church of Notre Dame. All right, the Church of Notre Dame here in North America was actually was built from what we call Tudor style architectural buildings, and we know that Notre Dame takes its origin from the Notre Dame over in what we call France, and there was this ceremony for the reopening of the territory over in France, known as the Notre Dame Cathedral, which is paramount to Archbishop lesson as well as this lesson in regards to prayer, okay, which was the actual prayer going back to the time of King Edward the Peaceful through his ceremonial coronation, and that prayer being the prayer of Te Deum. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into this marvelous lesson that I have prepared for you. All those who are going to be watching, please share, like, and subscribe, as well as all donations, gifts, comments, so send them to the Third Temple English Church of England, which is at the bottom of uh, the lecture. If you go to the post on YouTube, you should see the actual uh, ways to actually donate your gifts as well, or you can send them to $ Clifford Jefferson L. All right, and it's well appreciated. So with that, let's get started with this marvelous lesson, and please pay very close attention. We also going to talk about real quick about the coming deportation of those who are not going to be classified as birthright citizens based upon what was stated by um, Trump through his first days and when he's committed to office. All right, so we're going to go over that, and that's very important for us as being emancipated by the 13th Amendment and having our rights or our status pertaining to our rights determined by those who are in their official capacity. And we know that in lieu of the Supreme Court of the United States versus One Kim Ark, that the citizenship based upon those who were emancipated in the 14th Amendment must be looked at in light of the English common law of England. So if you're not looking at your status in light of the English common law of England, then it's based upon the process that were established here in North America, which is the process for birthright citizenship, or those who are being naturalized, or those who be in temporary or permanent residency here, which is now in question. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to take our start from uh, Trump. All right, so let's get started. I think I had it. Every Asiatic, black, Negro, colored, Ethiopian, more, you better pay attention to what's being said.
Let me ask you about some of your other promises on this topic. You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it with the.
So she's asked him, would he ever be able to get around the 14th Amendment? All right. He said, we're going to have to go back to the people. It has to be done. Let's just hear it again.
Let me ask you about some of your other promises on this topic. You
Okay.
promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an
Well, we're going to
executive
have to get a
action?
change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
You know, we're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive
You know,
action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app.
Okay. I'm going to play it one more time.
Let me ask you about some of your other promises on this topic. You
Okay.
promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an
Well, we're going to
executive
have to get a
action?
change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
You know, we're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive
Do you know,
action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it.
Thanks for watching.
Okay. Everyone heard it. We have to end this. He said, but yet he was had to deal with the COVID situation. All right. But yet he vowed to end birthright citizenship here in what we call North America. There are only 4 ways to acquire citizenship, which is through Calvin's case that deals with the foreign nationals who are allowed to settle under the British Empire. Okay. Not the English Empire or the English Crown, but under the British Empire and under the British Crown under Scottish monarch. The other way was that of the Naturalization Act of 1790, which had to deal with those who became citizens by way of the color of skin. Okay, free white persons. Okay, and the color of skin that they were talking about was not in favor of those who were of darker skin. You can see in Ray versus in Ray Ahmad Hassan, that Supreme Court case that we spoke about monumental of times. All right, in regards to the status of dark-skinned Anglo-Saxons being establishing through what we call genetic testing. When I say genetic, I'm talking about genealogy. All right, versus the classification of citizenship based upon what they meant by the Naturalization Act of 1790, which is only included the founding fathers and those citizens who they declared to be what they call, what's the term they use? Good behavior. Okay, these are your commoners. So it's very important to understand it. We just heard it from Trump himself. Let's get another article on that just to qualify it. Litigation is a certainty. Trump calls to end birthright citizenship and will face a mountain of opposition. Executive order will kickstart a legal fight that could lead to a Supreme Court ruling on the ending of birthright citizenship. So we're talking about a ruling on birthright citizenship from the Supreme Court of the United States. And we know the Supreme Court of the United States already made a determination on birthright citizenship based upon you being a citizen under the new administration of government for those who were to be emancipated by way of the 14th Amendment. Parts of that will become citizens under the 14th Amendment. Okay, and that strictly dealt with those who were emancipated by the 13th Amendment. Now they created a process for citizenship, which is the latter process, which is through the Immigration Act. Okay, so Donald Trump is not talking about in this article or what he just said in that platform about citizenship through the Immigration Act. He's talking about citizenship through the birthright process, i.e., just soil, being born here on the soil. Okay, he wasn't specific about who did the birthright citizenship apply to, but he did state that it applied to the 14th Amendment. Okay, so we really have to scrutinize the 14th Amendment to really see who Trump is talking about in regards to being deported, even though you were born on this soil here in what we call the United States. Okay, very important. This article is July 28th, 2024. Trump was president back in 2017. Okay. Trump was president back in 2017. All right. And he's going to be president in 2025. It states here in NBC News, Washington, when Donald Trump took office in 2017, he immediately issued a provocative executive order banning travel from Muslim majority countries that led to chaos, confusion, and the flurry of lawsuits that ended up at the Supreme Court. Okay? If he wins the election in November, he has pledged to follow a similar course on another continuous policy proposal ending birthright citizenship. In May of last year, Trump released a campaign video renewing his call to end long-standing constitutional rights, saying he would sign an executive order on the day one of his presidency that would ensure that children born to parents who do not have legal status in the United States will not be considered United States citizens. You hear that? United States citizens. Once again, I repeat, he stated that he would sign an executive order on the day of his presidency that would ensure that children born to parents, all right, who do not have legal status in the United States would not be considered as United States citizens. The United States is among the only country, you hear that? The United States is among the only countries in the world that says even if neither parent is a citizen or even lawfully in the country, their future children are automatic citizens the moment parents trespass on the soil. Trump said this in the video. So he said the moment they trespass, that's what they did. They trespassed. That's what the British colonists did. They trespassed. In common law, this is the law of tort. Trespass by way of chattel, trespass by way of property, and trespass by way of what we call conversion. Okay? Birthright citizenship has long been understood to be required under the Constitution of the 14th Amendment, which states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. The language which included in the constitutional amendment enacted after the Civil War to ensure that black former slaves and their children were recognized as citizens. So they're specifically talking about a specific group of people that were formerly called slaves. And if this is concerning the argument with removal of the citizens in regards to those classified through birthright citizenship that was established through the 14th Amendment, then this is what will become a problem if he could come to be appointed to office. Okay? This is going to be a problem for those who are formerly called black slaves, those who are emancipated through the 13th Amendment and became citizens by way of the 14th Amendment, and they specifically mentioned Jew, black former slaves, and about Trump ending the birthright citizenship for black former slaves. He didn't say that on that lecture, but this is what he's talking about, and this is going back to 2017. Okay? 2017. This is a 2024 article, but it makes reference to statements made back in 2017. I showed my wife an article back in 2017 when he made the statement, and the wife was saying, yeah, well, that's back in 2017. He probably have a different change of heart. No, there is no change of heart for these type of people. Okay? So we must understand that the argument in regards to removal of those born on the soil, which became citizens by way of the 14th Amendment, is now about to be annulled. As Donald Trump get into office, and he's specifically talking about the annulment of the citizenship status of those who were formerly emancipated by the 13th Amendment. Why? Because under the 13th Amendment or the 14th Amendment, according to the Dred Scott case, you cannot be considered a citizen. Did you hear that? That's what the Supreme Court said in the Dred Scott case. Let's see what another Supreme Court said about citizenship status according to these who are emancipated by the 14th Amendment by way of being by the 13th Amendment and became citizens by way of the 14th Amendment. There's two windows of opportunity here by way of the naturalization process or the process for those being born on the soil through the 14th Amendment, uh, through the what we call an act of legislation or an act of statutory creation through an executive order, all right, which was by way of the 14th Amendment, or we can go based upon the act of that was created by the Supreme Court, okay? Because the only two cases we got to validate the status of the former black slaves here in North America is the Dred Scott case and the United States case versus Juan Kemart. We're already familiar with the Dred Scott case. Let's go to the case dealing with United States versus United States versus Juan Kemart, because that particular case, even though it was dealing with those born on the soil here in North America of foreign nationals from another country, i.e., from China from China, the actual intent of the 14th Amendment as interpreted by the Supreme Court and the United States versus Ron Kim Art, when you're talking about black people who were formerly slaves, should be interpreted in light of the English common law. Okay? I didn't say that. That was the Supreme Court. This is what the Supreme Court stated. Okay? So if the Supreme Court is going to overrule the birthright citizenship for people born over here by parents who are not citizens, but citizens abroad based upon their national status, then you have a determination. You have to make a determination of what foreign status do you claim to be here in what we call North America. Okay? Because in light of the common law, based upon what United States versus Juan Kim Ark stated, that's how we interpret our citizenship here in North America. Because the status under the common law is legally defined as the legal relationship between one's actions and behavior, which is established one's legal status under that common law, which is determining the status. Okay, you're not determining your status based upon the actions and behavior of the law that's recognized here in this state or this country. Okay, that's very, very, very important, because if it was, it will be looked in light of the English common law, like Supreme United States versus Juan Kim Ark stated, and not the Supreme Court case as Dred Scott ruled on. Okay, because we know that the Supreme Court case dealing with Dred Scott is basically the same Supreme Court case that Donald Trump is going to use to remove those Negro black cousins, the Ethiopians, who still have that status, all right? Because you have now went to the origin which you were supposed to, which was the Supreme Court stated in United States versus Juan Kim Art. Let's look at that before I move on with this lesson. United States versus Juan Kim Ark, okay, was a landmark decision of the United States court, which held that a child born in the United States of parents of Chinese descent who at the time of his birth are subjects of the Emperor of China but have a permanent domicile, i.e. residency in the United States, and are there carrying on business and are employed in any diplomatic or official capacity under the Emperor of China, automatically became United States citizens at birth, i.e. being born on the soil. The decision established the important precedents in its interpretation of citizenship clauses of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. So when we talk about the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which establishing birthright citizenship for foreigners, all right, for foreigners, you have to go through a naturalization process, okay? You have to go through that process. But if you are an English national, you don't have to go through the process, because by way of you not taking the naturalization process, there was no renunciation of your former allegiance to whatever nation or country that you claim to be subjects of, i.e. based upon your status. All right? Very, very important to comprehend, because based upon the status as English citizens, that's based upon the legal relationships of our actions and behaviors that establishes our legal status as subjects or heirs of the English under the English common law, which is a law, supreme law of this land. I didn't say it; the Supreme Court going to say it. It says the holding in this case, the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment must be interpreted in light of the English common law. Okay? The process they use for the Chinaman is not based upon English common law. It was based upon the process that they adopted to establish citizenship of how they declare a person a citizenship here in North America. All right? And we're going to talk about that because they qualified it in statute. Okay? Very important. So all those who are considered emancipated by the 13th Amendment, it's very important that you look to the English common law to determine your status based upon your behavior and actions, all right, here in this country. Okay? Because your actions and behavior is not rooted in the English common law, you have no protection of that law. Whether you're born on English overseas possessions, all right, which was governed by English common law, or over here where the actual intended government actually is seated. Okay, very important for you to understand that. All right. All right. What else I want to put? One more thing. New Jersey Revised Statute 39:3-29.3. Very, very, very important statute because this determines your status. Okay? All right? This is how they made you a family of every state within the United States. All right? As a result of the previous wars that your ancestors fought. Okay? As a result of that conflict, you are prisoners of war. Okay? You are prisoners of war. I'm going to prove it to you. All right? This statute, 2017, of the revised statute, govern motor vehicles and traffic regulations. So this all deals with the conveyance of chattel property that's identified on the instrument and recognized as a form of a conveyance. All right? Very, very, very important. This is the old version of the modern version of this instrument, which has nothing to do with a driving license. The title of it is identification cards. Okay? An instrument that identifies you. All right? Under Section A, the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission shall issue an identification card to any resident of the state who is 14 years of age or older and who is not a holder of a valid permit or a basic driving license. So at the age of 14, you are giving a standard ID. Did you ever receive a standard ID at the age of 14? I don't ever recall receiving one. All right. I do recall receiving a permit or a driving license, okay, which usually accomplishes the same goal for the purpose and intent of the instrument, okay? The identification card should attest, all right, this is personal information that belonged to you before it was registered with the department that's the agency of the state of New Jersey, do what we call the birth registration, all right? The identification card should attest to the true name, correct age, and veteran status, even at the age of 14, of the veteran status upon submission of satisfactory proof by any veteran and should contain other identifying data as certified by the applicant for such identification card. Okay? This is what's on the actual card. Every applicant now they just said at the age of 14. Okay? So every applicant at the age of 14 is supposed to receive this identification card that has their true name on it, correct age, and it denotes to a veteran status. All right? At the age of 14, they didn't go give you another age and I didn't mention veteran status. It said it at the age of 14, receive a veteran status upon submission of satisfactory proof by any veteran. So I guess if you go there and you receive this identification, that is satisfactory proof that you are in fact a veteran, not because you actually went to war, but that you are a descendant of somebody who went to war as a result of being in war, being at war, which is a conflict. Okay? And should contain other identifying data as certified by the applicant for such identification card. Okay, so if you didn't fill out the information on that application, then that means your parents filled out that information on that application to register you as a veteran based upon you being identified based upon some type of employment as a veteran. All right, even though you're not physically in a war, mentally you're in the war, and mentally in the war determines you're physically being captive. Okay? We must understand that every application for an identification card should be signed and verified by the applicant and should be accompanied by a written consent of at least one parent or the person's legal guardian if the person is under 17 years of age, and should be supported by such documentary evidence of an age identifying any veteran status or blindness or disability of such person as the chief administrator may require. Okay, so we understand that all this information outside of them determining the age that you're at, because it happens at the age of 14 as well as the age of 17. All right, or older. All right, very very important that we comprehend what I'm reading. All right, section 2. In addition to the requirement for the former and content of an identification card, not a driving license, not a not a driving permit, but a identification card. Okay. In addition to the requirement for the form and content of the identification card pursuant to this section, the Chief Administrator of the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission shall, upon submission of satisfactory proof, designate or on a identification card that a card holder is a Gold Star family member. Did you hear that? A Gold Star family member. So you are a member of the Gold Star family, which a family that is associated with war. Okay? With war. The commission shall provide the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs personal identifying information for any person issue a identification card with a Gold Star family designation pursuant to this section. Boy, y'all better listen. Okay? Donald Trump was in office in 2017. He's ending birthright citizenship. The only instrument that you have to identify you as a citizen is what? Either that N form 400 or a identification card called a driving license, or a birth certificate, or a standard ID. Okay? All those denote to you being part of what we call the Gold Star family. Okay? So, what is the Gold Star family and what does the Gold Star family define as? Let's see. Gold Star family members means a spouse, a domestic partner, partners in a civil union, parent, brother, sister, child, legal guardian, or other legal custodian. That means that everybody is a member of the Gold Star family as being associated with some type of member who took part in some particular war. Okay? We must understand. Other legal custodians, whether a whole or half blood or by adoption of a member of the armed forces of the United States or National Guard who lost his or her life while active duty for the United States. Better means a person who has been honorably discharged for the active military services of the United States. Okay? Whether you died, whether you were active, whether you're non active, your family member has just now been registered with the family associated with the Gold Star, which is associated with members who are now part of the family as a result of the prior member or the now or the present member, one being still living. You have now earned a place in their family. Okay, in their family. You read it right there. New Jersey Revised Statute 39:3-29.3. All right. 2017. Donald Trump was president in 2017. All right. Your birthright status, all right, is determined by the instrument we are now identifying. Okay. We know for us at English National, we don't need any instrument to identify us created by the state because our identity as English nationals is determined by the English status under the common law, which is regulated by the legal activity of our actions, behavior, which establishes the legal status as English nationals. Okay, not if you're identifying your status based upon the statute, you are now part of the military family, and you are now what they call uh, what's that term they use? Expendable. Okay? Expendable. Let's go. So 39:3, 29.3. All right. Let's read it in the updated version of 2023. This is why the public defenders didn't want to take this uh, argument that I'm bringing forth. All right, because they have an oath to the court. All right, they have an oath to the laws of the court. Okay, so they cannot defend me. All right, any person who acted in the capacity by way of oath to the courts, because they are not common law courts. They should be common law courts, but they are not common law courts, and there's a reason for that. Why? Because you are not citizens of the common law based upon your status under the common law, which is determined by your actions and behavior. Okay, your actions and behavior. And I'm reading your actions, behavior by way of what you pull out your pocket to determine if you're in fact a citizen. Okay? If you are a citizen. If your identification card that you pull out determines that your status is a citizen of a foreign national that was not recognized in this nation now under foreign conquest, you will be deported. Okay? You will be deported no matter what color skin you have. All right? Under the 14th Amendment, you will be deported. Okay? You can evade this argument if you want, but it's coming. Okay? You are part of a Gold Star family. That means that you are subject to military discretion. All right? FEMA camps, boot camps, prison asylums. This is where all this is going to come into effect. I'm gonna show you. They're already preparing for my return. All right, in the political on the political level as well as the religious level. All right, it all leads back to me. Let's prove it. Trump trying to bring back prayer in schools. All right, prayer in schools. He's trying to bring that back. There's a reason for that. All right, I'm about to show you. This is this present statute. 2023, not 2017, but 2023. Updated. This was given these uh 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 the judges and the courts and the public defenders have a problem because of this statute that I found. Okay, they can't get around this statute. Okay, this is their doomsday. This statute. Let's read it in a minute. Give me a second. Okay. Any document and personal information, including an applicant photograph, obtained by the commission for an applicant from an applicant for a standard identification card should be confidential, should not be considered a government record. You hear that? According to the public record under New Jersey Revised Statute 47:1A-1 as sequence. This is where we file for the public record that we are subjects of the Crown of England under the English common law based upon the public record and under the common law of England file for the public record. Okay? So this is our evidence, prima facie evidence of who we are. Okay? You must comprehend that. Who else has done that? All right? Who else has done that? Very important. Any document and personal information, including applicant photographs, obtained by the commission for the applicant for standard identification card, should be considered confidential and should not be considered a governmental record pursuant to Public Law 1963, which is actually cited as 47:1A at -1, which under New Jersey Revised Statute, or it won't be considered a part of the common law concerning access to government records and should not be disclosed by the commission for any purpose related to Title 8 of the United States Code, which deals with nationals or aliens. Now, it's very important to say that because you won't have access to government records. That's the purpose of the Real ID Act, to have access to public buildings as well as to enter in and out of the country. Okay? This is a result of protection of our borders. What borders? The English borders. All right? It says that this standard ID, all right, is not associated with a nation. Title 8 deals with citizenship, i.e., whether you're national, foreign national, alien. But this standard ID has nothing to do with that. But yet, you are registered with what? The Gold Star family. Y'all better wake up, brothers and sisters. Y'all better wake up. So any document and personal information, including an applicant's photograph, obtained in commission from an applicant for a standard identification card should be confidential. All right, it should not be considered a governmental record pursuant to 47:1A-1. all right, or the common law concerning access to government record and should not. So they now the government. It should not be disclosed by the commission for any purpose related to Title 8 of the United States Code without the informed consent of the applicant, a warrant signed by a state or federal judge, or a lawful court order or subpoena, except that notion of this section to be construed to prohibit or in any way restrict any action where such prohibition or restriction will be contrary to the federal law. In lieu of that, we must look to Title 8 of the United States Code 1448 that deals with a renunciation of citizenship. Okay? To become a citizen, you must renounce your prior citizenship. Our citizenship here in North America is based upon the common law, which determines our legal status. Everyone else's citizenship is determined by this here statute, which determines that you are not a citizen of the common law. You are not a citizen based upon the public record because your status is not put on the public record to determine your citizenship. Why? Because you are a prisoner of war. You better pay attention. Possession of a standard identification card issued pursuant to this section should not be considered evidence of an individual's citizenship or immigration status and should not be used as a basis for an investigation, arrest, citation, prosecution, or detention. Isn't that what they're using that for? To arrest you, to cite you, to prosecute you, to investigate you, etc. All right? It also reemphasizes that in addition to the requirement for the form and content of the identification card pursuant to this section, the Chief Administrator of New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission shall, upon submission of satisfactory proof, designate an identification card that the cardholder is in fact a Gold Star family member. So if this identification card doesn't have nothing to do with citizenship, then how the hell are you in fact a citizen of this Gold Star family? Somebody please answer that question for me. All right? If you don't answer for me, you better answer for yourself. Because if you don't, guess what? You are in fact their subject. You are in fact their citizen. You are in fact their property. Let's continue. Let's see now where I want to go. Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead. This is why church is important. We were registered with the church. Okay? Church is very important because this lesson is called Origin of a Prayer of Our Lord Christ from the English Benedictine Reformation. That means the English Reformation of the church and the members of the church. Okay? All right, there's a lot of churches with a lot of members, but are they members of Christ? Okay? Are they members of Christ? All right? Very, very, very important because this year, according to the 6,000-year prophecy, Christ is returning. Okay? Christ is supposed to be returning. All right? This is the what the ceremony about Notre Dame was all about. Okay? Let's play that clip real quick. Where is it at? There we go. Why did this ceremony take place? Okay. Archbishop knocks on the doors of Notre Dame Cathedral at the reopening ceremony, all right, what took place on December 9th, okay, or December 8th, 9th or the 8th, all right, it's a reopening ceremonial on the Notre Dame Cathedral, okay, which is a church in Paris, okay. Very, 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 very important because Archbishop just did a lesson on the churches, okay, on the churches, the historical relation to the churches around the world, based as well as the relation to those churches around the world to the churches here, based upon the origins of the architecture. Okay, whether it was Gothic, whether it was Tudor, whether it was Norman, all right, they all have the origin leading back to our ancestors. It's very, very, very important. How we know it? Let's see. All right. That was the ceremony of Archbishop knocking on the doors of Notre Dame Cathedral. Let's see. You've seen it for yourself. So why is this important? Why is this important? Let's take a look at that. All right. Notre Dame. Notre Dame de Paris, meaning Our Lady of Paris, also referred to simply as Notre Dame, is a medieval Catholic cathedral on the Lys de la Cite in islands and river Seine, and the fourth arrondissement of Paris, France. The cathedral dedicated to the Virgin Mary, Our Lady, is considered one of the finest examples of the French Gothic architecture. Several attributes set it apart from the earliest Romanesque style, including its pioneering use of the ribbed vault and flying buttress, its enormous and colorful rose windows and naturalism, and abundance of its sculptural decoration. Notre Dame is also exceptional for its three pipe organs, one of historic and immense church bells. Okay, you see that in the ceremony that we just viewed. Okay, very, very important. The construction of the cathedral began in 1163 AD under Bishop Maurice de Sully and was the largely completed by 1260, though it was modified in succeeding centuries. Okay, we're talking about this church, all right, Notre Dame Cathedral, called Our Lady Church. Okay, when they talking about lady, talking about Mary. Okay, the mother of Jesus, okay, symbolically. All right. Very important for you to understand that. It was consecrated May 19th, 1182, founded by Maurice de Sully, okay? The reopening ceremony was December 7th, 2024, okay? 2024. Very important that we understand this, all right? 2024, all right? Now, who was Maurice de Sully? Maurice de Sully, Archbishop of Paris, is a Latin Church ecclesiastic. Pardon, so on one. Maurice de Sully was a bishop of Paris from 1160 until his retirement in 1196. He was responsible for the construction of the Cathedral of Notre Dame. You hear that? For the Cathedral in Notre Dame. All right? Very, very, very important. All right? So we know who built it. De Sully. Right here. Biography. He was born to poor parents in Sully-sur-Loire near Orleans at the beginning of the 12th century. He came to Paris toward 1140 and studied for the ecclesiastical states. He soon became known as an able professor of theology and an eloquent preacher. He has been frequently asserted, but without sufficient proof, that he was a canon of Bourges. In 1159, he was mentioned as the Archdeacon of Paris, and on 12th of October 1160, largely due to the influence of Louis VII, he was elected to succeed Peter Lombard in the episcopal see of the city. So we're talking about Notre Dame Cathedral being built by Maurice de Sully, and Maurice de Sully was influenced by who? Louis VII. Okay, Louis VII. Before we get into the history of Louis VII, who Maurice de Sully worked on behalf of in regard to the construction of the Cathedral of Notre Dame, which is a ceremony that was just initiated December 2nd, 2024. Okay, what was the content of the ceremony that we want to read about? Very important. Reopening ceremony. On Saturday, December 7th, 2024, Notre Dame de Paris will open once again to embrace its role as a place of worship and historical heritage during a solemn ceremony. The inaugural services led by Archbishop Laurent Autrich of Paris marks the resurrection of the cathedral after 5 years of restoration. On Sunday, December 8th, 2024, the first Mass in the restored cathedral will be highlighted by the consecration of a main altar, presided over by Archbishop Laurent Autrich. The Mass will gather nearly 170 bishops from around the world, parisans, priests, head of state, and faithful attendees to celebrate this unique event. All right, very, very important to understand the purpose and intent of this ceremony. The reopening ceremony will take place in the presence of the president of the president of the republic, who will address numerous heads of state and government dignitaries, patrons, and guests invited jointly by the state and the diocese, alongside representatives of all partition parishes, members in the cathedral chapter, and clergies of Paris. I thought there was a separation of church and state here, y'all. I guess not. During the ritual of the opening of the doors, the Archbishop will strike the closed door of Notre Dame de Paris with his crozier. The cathedral, that's that staff. The cathedral will respond by chanting Psalms 121 3 times. After being silent for years, the cathedral will resound once again with songs of praise, and on the third chant, the doors will open. Following this initial rite, the service will unfold three parts. First, the awakening of the grand organ. After opening the service with the sign of the cross, the Archbishop will bless the instrument 8 times and will address the grand organ, and he will respond. Second, the chanting of the service. This will include a hymn of psalms of the Magnificat prayer intentions for the world and the Lord's Prayer. You hear that, y'all? Did you hear that? The title of this lesson is The Origin of the Prayers of Our Lord Christ from the English Benedictine Reformation. Very, very important. So the chanting of the services, this will include a hymn, a psalms, the Magnificat prayer intentions for the world, and the Lord's Prayer. The final blessing and the Te Deum. The Archbishop will conclude the ceremony with a blessing followed by the chanting of Te Deum. Did you hear that, y'all? Te Deum. How many of you know what that is? How many of you know what that is? If you don't, let's see. December 8th. The literary mass will feature several key moments. Sprinkling of water, liturgy of the world, consecration at the altar. All right. All these particular ceremonies, symbolic ceremonies, are taking place. Why is this so important? Let's go to the origin of it. Let's go to the origin of it, brothers and sisters. Te Deum. From kin to king. State of development in Anglo-Saxon England. This book is written by Mark Weiner, a legal scholar, constitutionalist, and Rutgers University. Okay, this is the book he wrote. We expound upon it several times. Only reason why I'm going back to it because the ceremony that took place in Paris at Notre Dame Cathedral was based upon the Te Deum. Okay, to Te Deum. So what is that? And where is the origin going back to the Te Deum? Let's see. In 973, in the Abbey of Bath, a great Anglo-Saxon king lay prostrated before an altar while the Archbishop of Canterbury wept with joy. The Archbishop talked about that in his prior lesson. So you need to go back and watch that again. This king was Edgar the First, who I'm the reincarnation of, known as Edgar the Peaceful, or King Edgar Jefferson, because Jefferson means peaceful place. And at the age of 30, he was in the 14th year of an exceeding successful reign. Okay? In his 14th year, he was in an exceedingly successful reign. Under his rule, England revamped its currency, streamlined its central administration, sustained its military authority over a once restrictive Islam, and recognized its counties along lines that will remain essentially unchanged until 1974. The Archbishop was Dunstan, a determined reformer of the English Benedictine Church, an advocate for its modernistic interests. Overcome by the king's humility, he sang the song hymn Te Deum through his tears. We praise thee, O God. We acknowledge thee to be our Lord. A half century later, he will be canonized as a saint. This is the same ceremony that they are demonstrating in Paris cathedrals, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, okay, which was constructed by Maurice de Sully under the auspices of Louis VII. Louis VII was married to Eleanor of Aquitaine, who did marry who? Henry II, the son of Godfrey V, Count of Anjou, the son of Fulk, the ruler of Jerusalem. Okay, I'm going to prove it. The occasion of Edgar's piousness, self-infatuation, and thus his joy was the king's coronation. Tellingly, The ceremony was held on the day of Pentecost when Christians celebrated the descent of the Holy Spirit on the apostles. The age of the king, too, was significant, the same at which Jesus began his ministry. The ritual began with Agur wearing a crown and holding a scepter, was led into the abbey by a parade of white-robed clerics and a crowd of peace. In the words of the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, a throng of monks and council says the ensuing ceremony was filled with all the pageantry of the great royal events in England today. All right. The king will be anointed with holy oil from an animal's horn. He will be given a ring, a swan, a crown, a scepter, and a staff as a symbol of his rule. And the abbey will resound with the joyous anthem from First Kings, the Zodok priest of Nathan the prophet. But its constitutional But in constitutional terms, the most important part of the ritual came when Agur spoke shortly after the clerics raised him from his position of humility before the altar. For it was then that he swore his coronation oath, making a public promises to rule according to certain principles. His words have echoed as loudly across constitutional history as the anthem of the Zodok priest echoed in the Abbey of Bath that day. In the name of the Holy Trinity, I promise three things to the Christian people, my subjects. He declared first that God's church and all Christian people of my realm shall enjoy peace. Second, that I forbid all ranks of men robbery and all wrongful deeds. Third, that I urge and command justice and mercy in all judgments, so that the gracious and compassionate God who lives and reigns may grant us all his everlasting mercy. In modern terms, the king had pledged to protect the church to safeguard public order by applying the laws to all persons regardless of their rank, and to govern according to an abstract Christian idea of justice, which you have here. The concrete idea of justice is the justice system, that which is about to come. Agur's pledge in his first coronation oath an Anglo-Saxon historical record, and though it may not have been the earliest ever taken by the English kings, it is clearly marked an Anglo-Saxon government as having come a long way from its roots in a very different ways of life. Once again, it is clearly marked an Anglo-Saxon government as having come a long way from its roots in a very different way of life. So the Anglo-Saxon government was determined by the church, but here we have a separation of church and state. That means that God ain't there, Jesus ain't there, the word ain't there. Why? Because the word belongs in the church. The word in the beginning was the word was God, the word became flesh and dwelt amongst men. Okay? Which is in concrete, not the abstract practices that you now have. What are the preconditions for modern clan societies to develop the rule of the law? What are the fruits of the transformation? The English Middle Ages, the story leading to Agur's coronation oath and beyond, offers important clues. He who writes your book sets your timeline. Time of the war of man begin. The life of time begin, the time will come when we will be no more. Okay? We must understand what I'm telling you. All right? Let's see. Let's qualify it. So we see that the ceremony in Notre Dame, okay, the ceremony in Notre Dame in Paris was known as, where was I at? All right. Back to Notre Dame. Follow the crumbs, y'all. Notre Dame was built by Maurice de Sully. Maurice de Sully, in his biography, stated that he was influenced by Louis VII. Okay, he was influenced by Louis VII. Very important for you to write that name down. Okay, now where I want to go. Let's see. Also, Maurice de Sully was in conflict with Henry II. Okay, very important. And the controversy between Thomas Becket and Henry II of England, he energetically defended the former, i.e., Thomas Becket. And three letters still extant, pleaded his cause with Alexander III, who forbade the celebration of the Feast of the Immaculate Conception in his diocese, but is said to have a strongly supported by the appeals to the Bible, Job 25-27. The doctrine of the resurrection of the bodies, again against some spectacled noblemen. Although he retained the administration of his diocese, he retired late in life to the Abbey of St. Victor Parish, where he died. So once again, Maurice de Sully was in conflict with Henry II of England. Okay? Very important that we understand that, because we understand that he built the church of what we call St. Patrick's Cathedral. Okay? Thomas St. Patrick's Cathedral was built by Maurice de Sully, and Maurice de Sully was working under Henry VII, and Henry VII was at war against the Plantagenet crown because he descended from the Capetine dynasty. All right? Very important we understand the figures who play in this role. All right? Because it all goes back to the first 100-Year War, which was under the auspices of who? Louis VII. Louis VII was one of the parties in the start of what we call the 100-Year War. Now let's get to another church in Paris that's under the same auspices of Notre Dame. Okay, Milady. Let's see. Maurice, not this one. Fontevraud Abbey. Okay. Abbey of Notre Dame de Fontevraud. Okay. So this is also in Notre Dame. Okay. Very important. Which is the true one and which is the fake one? That's what we're going to ask ourselves. Fontevraud Abbey. Look in the box, everyone. Fontevraud Abbey, Abbey Notre Dame de Fontevraud. Monastery information. Full name, Abbey of Our Lady of Fontevraud. Other names, Abbey of Fontevraud. All right. Established in 1101. So this was built before the Abbey of Notre Dame, the Notre Dame Cathedral. Okay, built by Maurice de Sully. This abbey was built before. This abbey here, Abbey of Our Lady of Fontevraud, was built before the Notre Dame Cathedral. Okay, by Maurice de Sully. All right, and we know Maurice de Sully was at odds with Henry II. Okay, Henry II was buried in this royal abbey of Our Lady. Notice they both called both abbeys Our Lady. All right, very important that they both call the cathedrals Milady. Okay, which one is the right cathedral? Okay, one was called a Roman Catholic cathedral, and one was called a abbey. All right, very very important to understand those terms: abbey versus a cathedral. Okay. Dedicated to Our Lady. What lady? Mary, Mother of Jesus. Very important. So, which abbey or cathedral is the right church to be gathering in? All right, amalgamating in. Which one? Because we see there was a ceremony taking place in the cathedral in St. Patrick's. Parts of Notre Dame's Cathedral in Paris. All right, and we've seen all the head officials there. All right, let's watch that one more time. get my spelling. Gotta catch it. Right? And why we're revealing this because he's knocking on the door for entry. Okay? Entry. I don't want that one. This one. All right, share. There's Jesus Christ right there. So as you can see, all right, as you can see, that was the ceremony. That's the same ceremony that we read uh and Mark Weiner's book, all right, based upon the coronation going back to King Edgar the Peaceful, all right. So the same ceremony you've seen taking place there goes all the way back to King Edgar the Peaceful, all right. So going back to Fontevraud's Abbey. Fontevraud's Abbey was the abbey built and was dedicated. Let's read a little bit about it real quick. The Royal Abbey of Our Lady Fontevraud was a monastery in the village of Fontevraud-l'Abbey near Chinon, and the former French Duchy of Anjou. It was founded in 1101 by the itinerant preacher Robert de Arzbisel. The foundation flourished and became a center of the new monastic order and order of Fontevraud, known as the Abbey. So abbeys went according to the St. Benedictine, which goes back to the ancient Benedictine reform, going back to King Edgar the Peaceful. Very important you understand that, brothers and sisters. The first permanent structure was built between 1110 and 1119. These areas where the abbey is located was then part of what is sometimes referred to the Angevin Empire. The kings of England, Henry II and his wife Eleanor of Aquitaine, and their son King Richard of Lionheart, Richard I, that's where we get the concept time immemorial, were all buried here at the end of the 12th century and were seized and disestablished at the monastery during the French Revolution. Okay? So we see the other monastery built by Maurice de Sully, who was working with Thomas Becket and Louis VII, were at conflicts with Henry II, who ancestors built what we call the Abbey of Our Lady Fontevraud, okay, in Notre Dame, okay, both dedicated to Our Lady. Very, very important to understand these facts. All right. They go Eleanor of Aquitaine, right? Look at the hands. Look at her the distortion. I won't say distortion, but the actual chipping of the actual colorization of the actual entombment or statue resemblance of Eleanor of Aquitaine. Very important for you to understand that. So that means that this particular abbey, all right, or cathedral, whatever you want to call it, all right, was also in Notre Dame, which is named or honored after Milady, i.e. Queen Mary, okay? So which one do we associate with? Because we see that there was a ceremony going on in the same abbey that involved the ceremonial precepts going back to that which was practiced in the English Benedictine Reform with King Edgar the Peaceful, okay? We see that. So did it belong to them or did it belong to us? All right? Because none of the people who attended the ceremony are English. Right here. Where did they get this practice from? We got to ask ourselves that. All right? And it also says that one of the aspects of it was prayer. Where was it at? Right here. Where did I read that at? Where was that at? Right here. Changing in the chanting of the services. This will include a hymn, psalms of the Magnificat, prayer intentions for the world, and the Lord's Prayer. Okay, once again, this whole lesson is based upon the origin of the Lord's Prayer, because everything is in they're doing is the name of the Lord. Okay, that's where it goes back to in the name of the Lord. All right, very, very important because that's where I'm going next. Christianity and Anglo-Saxon. Christianity and Anglo-Saxon England, because King Edgar was the king of the Christians, all right? He was the king of the Christians. Everybody who claimed to be Christians ain't Christians, okay? And the 7th century pagan Anglo-Saxons were converted to Christianity, mainly by missionaries sent from Rome. This is a different type of Christianity because when we go back to the Christianity of those done by Rome, you're going back to those Nordic Frankish, going back to Clovis the First, those barbarians, all right? I talked about it in prior lessons. I ain't got time to go through it now. So we're talking about a different classification and a different groups of people who are now identifying with the term Christians. All right. You have to go to your Savior for that. We see King Edgar promised to his uh, society or group or people as Christians. Okay. And he made a promise to us. All right. Very important. And the 7th century pagan Anglo-Saxons converted to Christianity mainly by missionaries sent from Rome. This goes back to uh, uh, Gregorian mission. All right, Pope Gregory the First and what's his name? Pope Gregory the First and what's his name? Pope Gregory the First and what's his name? I got a brain freeze. Pope Gregory the First and Pope Alexander. What's his name? Pope Gregory the First and I forgot his name. I'm not gonna waste too much time on it. But it's Pope Gregory the First. Let me just pull it up. Got too much stuff up in his head. It's a shame. Gregorian mission. Gregorian mission was a Christian mission led by Pope Gregory I and Augustine of Canterbury. That's what I was looking for. Pope Gregory I and Augustine of Canterbury. Pope Gregory I was the Pope who commissioned Augustine of Canterbury to have all the Anglo-Saxon Berbers converted to Christianity. That's why we had what we call the English Benedictine reform done by Alfred the Great and his successors, all right, which would be our Jesus Christ, King Edward the Peaceful, which at that time, the Reformation of the English Church came to its height, all right, because it's all about the prayer of the Church of England going back to the English Benedictine reform. We must comprehend. So the Gregorian mission was done by Pope Gregory I and Augustine of Canterbury to convert all of you to a different type of Christianity that was not the practice of our forefathers. What Christianity did Pope Gregory I and Augustine of Canterbury bring over, and who did he use to convert based upon that Christianity that he brought over? Let's see real quick before I move forward. Romans, that's it. All right here. During his papacy, i.e., Pope Gregory I, his administration greatly surpassed that of the emperors in improving the welfare of the people of Rome. Gregory gained the papal authority in Spain and France and sent missionaries to England, including Augustine Canterbury and Paulinus of York, to realignment of the barbarian legions to Rome from their Arian Christian alliances shaped medieval Europe. Gregory saw the Franks, Lombard, and Visigoths aligned with Rome and religion. So the Christianity that were imposed through the Gregorian mission was not imposed upon us. It was imposed upon the barbarians who were Frankish, Lombardian, and Visigoth descent. All right? We must comprehend. So let's go back to the original lesson. Christianity. All right, we talked about the Gregorian mission. All right. We talked about the Gregorian mission, and we're going to come all the way up. All right. Until the time of the kings of Wessex. All right. That would be around the 8th, 9th century. This has come up through time. At this time, when we were invaded by Roman Frankish descendants, we were split in kingdom. That's why when you read the book from Mark Weiner, it says from kin to king. All right, from kin to king, and the king he started with was King Edward the Peaceful. There were prior kings from Anglo-Saxon time prior to King Edward the Peaceful who were all related, but they didn't have a peaceful ring as a result of the conflict in the kingdoms. Okay, very important for you to understand that. All right. So the true church or the concept of church or the practice of church didn't come into their height until the 10th century when King Edward the Peaceful had concentrated all the affairs internally that were in conflict internally as a result of outside influences. Okay, and the outside influences actually influenced those who were inside the church, which resulted in the conflict or the breakdown, which we call the anarchy at that particular time. We must comprehend. Benedictine reform, right here. So this all involves Christianity in Anglo-Saxon times. All right. So when you involve Christianity, you also involve the church. Okay. All right. When you involve Christianity, you also involve the church. And this church also involves the church during the time of the House of Tudors. Okay. House of Tudor was started by Henry VII, all right, who conquered as a result of the conflict that started what we call the 100-Year War, which leads to who? Louis VII. And Louis VII um, uh, um, was the one who allowed Maurice de Sully to start the construction of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Okay, and he was at conflict with Henry II, who already had his church established as a cathedral known as the Abbey. All right, which goes all the way back to uh, his predecessors. Okay, which were what we call the kings of Wessex. Okay, and the kings of Plantagenet crown, because the Plantagenet crowns and the kings of Wessex were related, all right, through Margaret of Wessex, all right. Very important. We talked about it in my last lesson. If you didn't catch that, please go back and revisit it. So the Church of England, going all the way back to the English Reformation, through the time when Rome invaded, all right, had to be revamped again as a result of influences through the invasions on our church, okay? Through the invasions on our church. And that was a result of the constant uh, wars that we went through, all right? Military conflicts that we went through to protect our dominion and our what we call our boundaries, all right? So it says the Benedictine reform was led by St. Dunstan over the latter half of the 10th century. It sought to revive the church piety by replacing secular canons, often under the direct influence of local landowners, and often their relatives, with celibate monks, answering to the ecclesiastical hierarchy and ultimately to the Pope. This deeply split the newly formed Kingdom of England, bringing it to a point of civil war, with the East Anglian nobility such as Asterton, Half-King, and Berthenold supporting Dunstan in the Wessex aristocracy. Odgard, Ellesmere, and Stout supported the secularists. These fascists mobilized around King Edward, anti-Dunstan, and his brother King Edgar Pro. On the death of Edgar, his son Edward the Martyr was assassinated by the anti-Dunstan faction and their candidates. The young King Ethelred was placed on the throne. However, this most terrible deed since the English came from over part 7. However, this most terrible deed since the English came from over the sea provoked such revulsion that the secularists climbed down, although Dunstan was effectively retired. Okay? Very, very, very important to understand what happened at the time of the Benedictine reform, which was a result of what we call Viking invasions. Okay? Viking invasion. And this all involves what we call the origin of the church as well as the prayer that was involved in the church. Let's see. English Benedictine reform. Let's review that real quick. We did in the past, we will now do it in the present. The English Benedictine reform or monistic reform, all right, of the English church, all right, the English church. Before it was called the Church of England, it was called the English church, all right. The Church of England under the House of Tudors through Henry VII, Henry VIII, and Elizabeth I was a result of the Catholic influence going all the way back to Gregorian mission under Augustine of Canterbury and Pope Gregory I. Our English church was here prior to that uh, um, invasion and that persuasionist movement that they used to actually influence us to adopt the concept that we have now. Okay, so the English Benedictine reform or monistic reform of the English Church of England in the late 10th century was a religious and intellectual movement in the later Anglo-Saxon period. So when we dealing with the Notre Dame Cathedral, Paris, that where Henry II and all the Plantagenet kings were buried in, going all the way back to uh, uh, King Edward the Peaceful, were all related. Okay, they were all related. The English Benedictine reform or monistic reform of the English church in the late 10th century was a religious intellectual movement in later Anglo-Saxon period. In the mid-10th century, almost all monasteries were staffed by secular clergy who were often married. The reformers sought to replace them with the celibate contemplative monks following the rule of St. Benedictine. The movement was inspired by continental monastic reform, meaning the whole continent. This is a world transformation or transition. All right. The movement was inspired by a continental monastic reform, and leading figures were Dustin, Archbishop of Canterbury, Ethelwood, Bishop of Westchester, and Oswald, Archbishop of York. All right. In the 7th and 8th century England, most monasteries were Benedictine, but in the 9th century, learning and monasticism declined severely. Alfred the Great deplored the decline and started to reverse that decline. The court of Askerton, which means noble stone, the first king of the whole of England, was a cosmopolitan. The future reformers such as Dustin and Ethelwald learned from the continental exponent of the Benedictine monasticism, which is the intellectual movement, I might add. The English movement became dominant under King Edward, meaning that the English Church of England or the Christianity under the Christianity in England, not that which was created through the English Reformation, brought through the Gregorian mission by Pope Gregory I and Archbishop of Canterbury, but through the constant protection that was implemented by our ancestors to preserve the integral church that was customary by ways that were present in the past as well as in the future, as established by us, the Third Timothy English Church of England. It clearly says here in the 7th and 8th century of England, most monasteries were Benedictine, but in the 9th century, learning had declined. So Alfred the Great, his son Askerton, i.e., his grandson Askerton, the first king of Holy England, which was a cosmopolitan, helped to preserve it through what we call the ancient Benedictine Reformation that came to a head at the time of King Edward the Peaceful. Okay, King Edward the Peaceful, which I'm the reincarnation of in this present day, who supported the explosion of secular clergy from monasteries and cathedral chapters and their replacement by monks. The reformer had close relations with who? The crown, furthering the interest and depending on it for support. The movement was confined to southern England and Midlands, as the crown was not strong enough to northern England to confiscate property from local elites there to establish Benedictine foundations. The movement declined after the death of its leading exponents at the end of the 10th century. So the aim of the English Benedictine reform and the English church was to reclaim the property of God. Okay? To reclaim the property of the church. We must understand. And you are, in fact, the property of the church. Why is this important? What is the crown? The crown broadly represents the state in all its aspects within the jurisprudence of the Commonwealth. There are subdivisions known as crown dependencies, overseas territories, provinces, or states. This can be used to refer to the office of the monarch or the monarchy as the institution, to the rule of law or the functions of the executive, legislative, and judicial branch governing all civil services. All right? The concept of the crown, i.e., the concept, the purpose of the crown. The concept of the crown as a corporation developed first in the Kingdom of England as a separation of the physical crown and property of the kingdom, all right, from the person and personal property of the monarch. It spread through English and later British colonization and now rooted in the legal lexicon of all 15 Commonwealth realms, their various dependencies and state and free associations along with them. It is not to be confused with the physical crown that you see over there in England practiced today. The term is also found in various expressions such as crown land. Very important you understand what crown land is. Crown land, also known as royal domain, is a territorial area belonging to the monarch who personifies the crown. It is equivalent to an entail estate and passes with the monarchy being inseparable from it. Today, it is Commonwealth realms. Crown land is considered public land or royal domain or public domain, and is a part of the monarch's private estate. So when they went back to what we call the status under common law, the status under common law is a legal term that denotes to the character or actions which establishes the legal status based upon you being affiliated with the common law, which is governed by the crown. Okay? How we know that? Because the concept of the crown, as they just stated, is this. The concept of the crown took form under feudal system. Though not used this way in all countries that had the system, in England, all rights and privileges were ultimately bestowed by the ruler. Land, for instance, was granted by the crown to lords in exchange for their feudal services, and they in turn granted land to lesser lords. One exception to this was that of common soakers. Owners of land held as common soakers held it in subject only to the crown. When such land became ownerless, they are said to extinct, return directly to ownership of the crown land. If the crown is not there, overseen by the king, who represents the crown by way of corporation, so it automatically is presumed to be Benedictine, i.e., abandoned property, which we call today as what we call unclaimed property. All right, but which unowned property, i.e., Benedictine, ultimately goes what to who? The crown. You see it? It goes right to the crown. I say all that to say is we must go into the history of the Church of England. Okay? History of the Church in England. Let's view that now. We dealt with Christianity in England, all right? And we know that that goes back to the ancient Benedictine Reform. So let's look to the history of the Church of England, because we know that when we refer to it under the English Benedictine Reform, it was called the English Church of England. But nowadays, it's called the Church of England. The only part missing from that equation is English, all right? The Church of England. The Church of England traces history back to 597. That year, a group of missionaries sent from Pope and led by Archbishop Canterbury began with the Christianization of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, i.e. us, to their form of Christianity, which is denoted to the Catholic practices that were created under Henry VII's auspices. All right? This is what we come to correct. Throughout the Middle Ages, the English Church was a part of the Catholic Church led by the Pope of Rome. Over the years, won the church won many legal privileges and amassed vast wealth and property. This was often a point of contention between the kings of England and the church. You hear that? This was a contention between the kings of England and the church. During the 16th century English Reformation, which began with Henry VII, papal authority was abolished in England and the king became supreme head of the Church of England. Henry dissolved the monasteries, i.e. the churches, all right, and confiscated their assets. This goes into what we call the Sesquiquae. The church was briefly reunited with Rome during the reign of Mary I, but separated once again under Elizabeth I, and this established what we call the religious settlement, which established the Church of England as a conservative Protestant church. This is where you get into the what we call the Book of Common Prayers, the practices, traditions that you normally see now today. All right? Very, very, very important that you understand that. Why? Because for you to be able to disqualify this, you must understand what I'm about to bring to you now. Let's do this, y'all. History of the Lord's Prayer. Pay very close attention. The Lord's Prayer has been translated, updated throughout the history of the English language. Here are examples which shows the major development of the Lord's Prayer. Translation. The text, Matthew's Lord's Prayer and King James Version. So we're talking about your King James Version Bible. King James Version of the Bible ultimately derived from the Old English translation. You hear that? So it ultimately derived from the Old English translation. I didn't say that. They said it. Not considering the doxology, only 5 words of the King James Version are later borrowed directly from the Latin votives, these being depths, scepters, temptation, deliver, and amen. Early English translations such as the Wycliffe and Old English, however, were themselves translated from Latin and Vulgate. So we're going back to the original origin of the term or the phrase concerning the Lord's Prayer. Okay? Which they said originated or derives from the first English or Old English translation. All right? Old English or Anglo-Saxon was the earliest recorded form of English language spoken in England and southern eastern Scotland in early Middle Ages. It's developed from the languages brought to Great Britain by Anglo-Saxon settlers in the mid 5th century. Okay? So that means that if it was brought by people identified Anglo-Saxon, then that must not have been the original language that they spoke there. Okay? Because they had their own original language. And I'm telling you, that is actually English. Because if you go back to those who brought the so-called Old English, which is not English, is this. All right? Is this Linfrain's Gospel. All right, these are manuscripts involving what we call, or the origin of what we call the Lord's Prayer. All right, the Lord's Prayer. So this is where we take our cue from. All right, 940 AD, 995 West Saxons. Okay, that's Northumbria. All right, then you got the later origins, medieval English, 14th century. All right, Wycliffe's, Tinsdale, King James Version, all saying the same thing. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our debt as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from all evil. For thy is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Amen. These are all the translations of the Lord's Prayer, going all the way back to what we call Old English, all right, which was brought over to a territory called England, and the English people are the Anglo-Saxon version, okay? According to the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. We must understand that. So we went through the history of the Lord's Prayer. Why is this important? Why is this important? Let's see. Look at the time. English. 940 AD and 995 AD. So those are the most, or those are the ones we would go to based upon presidents, all right? That which existed longer, okay? A longer record. Very important. 940 to 995 AD, all right? Let's go here now. Where is it? Okay, here we go. Westchurch Gospel. We're talking about the Lord's Prayer of the English Church of England. Once again, we're talking about the Lord's Prayer of the English Church of England that was created through the English Benedictine Reform. Okay? Through the English Benedictine Reform. Not the King James Bible, not William Tinsdale or any other person. All right? This is the Westchurch Gospels from the Kings of Westchurch. The Westchurch Gospel, also known as the Westchurch Gospels, are a translation of 4 Gospels of the Christian Bible into the West Saxon dialect of Old English. You hear that? Old English. Produced from approximately AD 990 in England. This version is the first translation of all four Gospels into standalone Old English text. 7 manuscript copies survived, and transcribing were survived by the monk of Elfric of Ensham. The text, Matthew 6:9-13, is the Lord's Prayer. Okay? If we go back to the history of the Lord's Prayer, you will see the same language. Right there. The Lord's Prayer. You can't make this up. The Lord's Prayer has been translated and updated throughout history of the English language. So the English language has always been around. All right? Not that Old English that they're talking about that were brought over to England as a result of their translation. The text of the Matthean Lord Prayer in King James Version of the Bible ultimately derived from the first Old English translation. And it said Old English was brought over. It said, where's that? It said, Old English was the earliest recorded form of English language spoken in England and southern and eastern Scotland in the early medieval ages. It developed from the languages brought to Great Britain from Anglo-Saxon settlers in the mid 15th century. Okay, so you had a lot of people who claimed to be Anglo-Saxon. This is the reason why when we read the story from king to king, all right, they showed you how the ceremony was supposed to go based upon the origin where it stemmed from. Okay. All right, so we see the time error is 990 in regards to the origin of the Lord's Prayer. And that prayer and the origin where it originated from what we call in our ancient books called the books of Wessex Gospels. Okay? The four books you call Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were actually texts that originated from the books of the Wessex Gospels. We must comprehend that. All right? All right, we must comprehend that. Keep that year 990 in your head. All right. Why is this important? That takes us to what we call the day of Advent. So let's go back here. Okay. Exeter books. Once again, we're going back to 990, the Lord's Prayer, okay, the Wessex Gospels that you now say every time you go to church or when you get on your knees to go to bed. The origin of that prayer goes back to the Wessex Gospels. Not the Bible written by King James, William Tyndale, or anybody else who translated it, but back to the Wessex Gospel, all right? The Exodus books are known as the Codex Exionis. If I pronounce it wrong, please forgive me. Exionis. Exeter Cathedral Library, MS Roll 3501. It's a large codex of Old English poetry, believed to have been produced in the late 10th century AD. It's one of the four major manuscripts of Old English poetry, along with the Versilio books in Vercelli, Italy, and Nowell Codex in British Library, and the Junior manuscript in the Bodleian Library in Oxford. The book was donated to what is now the Exeter Cathedral Library by Leofric, the first bishop of Exeter. In 1072, it is believed originally to have contained 130 to 131 leaves, of which the first 7 or 8 had been replaced with other leaves. The original first 8 leaves are lost. The Exeter book is the largest, perhaps the oldest known manuscript on English literature. Did you hear that, y'all? History of the book. The Exeter book is generally acknowledged to be one of the greatest works of the English Benedictine revival. We just read about the English Benedictine revival. We read that the height of the English Benedictine revival came to its height with King Edward the Peaceful. We know that the Exeter books written in 960 to 990 all encompasses ceremonial precepts, even the Lord's Prayer. Okay? Even the Lord's Prayer. The Exeter books The Exeter books generally acknowledged to be one of the greatest works of the ancient Benedictine revival of the 10th century. The precise date that it was written and compiled are unknown. All the proposed date range from 960 to 990. Did you hear that? This period saw a rise in modernistic activity and productivity under the renewed influence of the Benedictine principles and standards. At the opening of the period, Dunstan's importance to the church and to the English kingdom was established, culminating in his appointment to the Archbishop of Canterbury under Edgar of England, leading to the modernistic reformation by which this area was characterized. Dunstan died in 998, and by the period close, England under Ethelred faced increasingly determined Scandinavian incursions to which it would eventually succumb. Okay? So we see the Exeter books, and some of the books that originated as a result of the English Benedictine reform was called the Books of Wessex. Once again, the Books of Wessex or the Wessex Gospels. All right? And it all involved King Edgar the Peaceful. Okay? All right, and this is why we get where we get the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6:9.13. All right, this is where we get the Lord's Prayer. Very, very important that you understand that. All right, and it's all about King Edgar the Peaceful. All right, who is to Christ in that day and time? How we know it? Let's look. Can't make this up. Greetings, Brother Cornier from the House of Cornier. Christ One. Christ One, also known as Christ A or the Advent lyric, is a fragmentary collection of Old English poems. Hear that? Advent. All right? An Advent lyric. Back in Christ's time, okay? Based upon who they identify as Christ, and this will only be King Edgar the Peaceful. I'm going to show you. Christ One, also known as Christ A or the Advent lyric, is a fragmentary collection of Old English poems on the coming of the Lord. Did you hear that? Preserved in Exeter books. All right? And Exeter books come from the era dealing with King Edgar the Peaceful. I just showed you this. All right? The Exeter books generally acknowledge one of the greatest works of the ancient Benedictine reform, all concerning King of England, who was King Edgar the Peaceful. Right there. So let's go back to the Exeter books. Exeter books is generally acknowledged to be one of the greatest works of the English Benedictine reform. In the 10th century, the precise date was that it was written and compiled are unknown, although proposed dates range from 960 to 970, 990. King Edgar died in 975. He was born in 943. Okay? He was born in 943 and died in 975. So that's well within the time frame of what we call the Exeter books. And the Exeter books were created through the English Benedictine reform, which was done, established, and came to the height with King Edgar the Peaceful, which goes all the way back to Alfred the Great. Okay? We must understand that all of these are Christians. All right? Why is this important? Because we go back to the Wessex Gospel. All right? The Wessex Gospel is the gospel of the kings of Wessex. Okay? Very, very important that you understand that. Let's go back to Christ One. All right? Christ One. I am that Christ. Christ One, as we know, according to the Exeter book, because it said it's preserved in the Exeter books, in its present state, the poem comprised 439 lines and 12 distinct sections. Its assessment of Edward B. Irving Jr. to masterpiece stands out of the mass of Anglo-Saxon religion poetry, the dream of the Rouge, and the sequence of literal lyrics in the Exeter books known as Christ One. Let's read a little bit more about it. All right? Let's read a little bit more about it. The topic of the poem in Advent, the time period in the annual liturgical cycle leading up to the anniversary of the coming of Christ, a period of great spiritual symbolic significance within the church. For some early medieval Europe at the time of fasting and the subject of the sermons by Pope Gregory the Great. All right, the Old English lyrics of Christ One played off the Latin antiphons reflect of this period symbolic preparation. So they were preparing for Christ's return. Okay? They were preparing for Christ's return. All right. Manuscript and associate text. Christ 1 is found on folio's 8th roll to the 14th roll of the Exeter books. A collection of Old English poetry today containing 123 folios. The collection also contains a number of other religious allegorical poems. Some folios have been lost at the start of the poem, meaning that an indeterminate amount of original composition is missing. Okay? It's missing. Now they're associating the Christ 1, which is the book originated in the Exeter books, going back to the English Benedictine Reform, okay? And you got 3 books, Christ 1, Christ 2, and Christ 3, and the Last Judgment, okay? Christ 1, Christ 2, Christ 3, and the Last Judgment. Christ 1 concerns the advent of Jesus and the following of the Exeter book by the poem of Jesus' Ascension, composed by Sinwolf, generally known as the modern scholarship of Christ 2, which in turn is followed by Christ 3 on the Last Judgment, the day of resurrection or the return of Jesus, which is the year 2024, which is equivalent to the year 2974, which is equivalent to the year 1 BC. Okay? How I know it? We can go to the calendar to qualify it. What does Advent mean? Advent. Advent is a season with most Christian denominations as a time of waiting and preparation for both the celebration of Jesus' birth at Christmas and return of Christ at the second coming. It begins on the 4th Sunday before Christmas, often referred to as the Advent Sunday. Advent is the beginning of the liturgical year in Western Christianity. The name comes from the Latin, means coming, arrival, all right? From the New Testament, originally referring to the second coming. So you're talking about the first coming and the second coming, all right? Very important. And in the years celebrating the Advent, in 2024, December 1st, and 2023 was December 3rd. When I filed my complaint to quiet the title on the land, that was filed on December 3rd. Okay? December 3rd. December 3rd is the day of Advent. Okay? It's the day of Advent. I didn't make the day up. They made it up. Let's see. An Anglican, Lutheran, Moravian, Presbyterian, and Methodist calendar, Advent begins in the 4th Sunday before Christmas, always falling between November 7th and the 3rd of December, and ends Christmas Eve on December 24th. So when I filed my complaint in Chancery Court, that was on December 2nd, and then I didn't get docketed on the court to what? December 8th. Okay, December 8th was the actual celebration going back into what we call Notre Dame Cathedral, which goes back to what we call Maurice de Sully. And Maurice de Sully was working for Henry VII, parts of Louis VII from the Capetine dynasty. And we know that they were warned with the Plantagenet dynasty kings under Henry II, who was also buried in a abbey, also known as what was called Foravid Abbey, and also in Notre Dame. So there's 2 churches in Notre Dame that are affiliated with Anglo-Saxon history, i.e. Henry II. The one built by Maurice de Sully and the one built by another person under the auspices of Henry II. And we know that the one who built that one was, without a doubt, affiliated with the Plantagenet kings. Okay? Let's see. Where are we at? So Advent started in December 23rd in 2023, and this year it was 2020 or December 1st in 2024. All right, and we know Advent, it deals with the day, the birth of Jesus, or the return of Jesus. Very, very, very important to understand that, because it stated it right here. Where is that at? Christ 1, right here. Manuscript and association text. Christ 1 concerns the advent of Jesus. All right. It's followed in the Exeter books by a poem of Jesus' Ascension, composed by Sinwolf, generally known as the modern scholarship as Christ 2, which in turn follow Christ 3, and on the Last Judgment. Okay. What's Christ 2 about? Christ 2 also the Ascension is one of the four sign poems that exist in the Old English vernacular. So Christ 1 deals with his birth, Christ 2 deals with his ascension, and Christ 3 deals with what? Christ 3 is an anonymous Old English religious poem which forms the last part of the Christ, a poetic triad form at the beginning of the extra books. It is found in folios 20b to 32a and constitutes line 867 to 1644 of the Christ and Crap and Dobie's Anglo-Saxon Poetic Records edition. And then we have the Last Judgment. Last Judgment is the concept found across the Abrahamic religion and Zoroastrianism. Okay, very important. All right, we ain't gonna go through that, but we know that the extra books that consist of Christ 1, Christ 2, Christ 3, the Last Judgment, as well as other books. Let's see, a lot of books associated with it from my ancestors. We're just gonna move. I ain't got time to go through them right now. All right, so let's see. We know Christ 1 has to deal with the day of event, which is the return of Christ. All right, all concerning his birth, his ascension, as well as his return. Okay, all this is well documented in the Western Gospel as well as the extra books. All right, and all this is preserved based upon cathedral practices that were created for mass. Okay, it was created for mass. This is how the people congregated and worship. Very, very important to understand that. All right, let's move forward. Year 6000. According to the classical Jewish sources, the Hebrew year 6000 marks the latest time from the initiation of the Messianic age. And Talmud, Midrash, and Zohar specify the date from which the Messiah will appear is 6,000 years from creation. All right? According to tradition, Hebrew calendar started from the time of creation, where place creation at the year 3761 BC. All right? BC era. All right. So the creation story, i.e., the beginning of the world, started in 3761 BC. It's stated that the return of Jesus will be 6,000 years later. That will be the year 2024, which will be the end of creation, which will be the year 5785. Okay. So the year 2024 in the Hebrew year is 5785, and the Berber year is 2974. Okay, pardon. So let me rephrase that again. Okay, so it says here, if we go to year one, let's go to the 1 BC first, real quick, to prove it, so to make it make sense. 1 BC. The year 1 BC under the Gregorian calendar, all right, we know the Gregorian calendar was created in 1582. So at this time, there could not have been a Gregorian calendar existing if the Gregorian calendar didn't exist in 1582. So the only calendar we can actually use to satisfy the theory is the Berber calendar, which is the year 950. Because how could it be 150 BC and the Gregorian calendar when the calendar was not created till 1582? So that's a lie. And you can't get to 1582 with Pope Gregory the 13th until we establish who Pope Gregory was and who he descended down from. Pope Gregory the 13th descended down from Pope Gregory the First, who was a result who ascended Augustine of Canterbury and the Gregorian mission of the conversion of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers into their form of Christianity. All right. Prior to Pope Gregory and Augustine of Canterbury coming in and putting their calendar in place, which didn't actually get initiated in 1582, the only calendar that was in existence at that time was the Berber calendar. And we know that in 753 BC, that was the time of the 23rd, the 20, what is it? The 25th dynasty. 753 BC is the time of the 25th, not the 25th, pardon, sir. Let's see. I know it was Berbers ruling at that particular time. I think it's the 18th dynasty. 753 BC. Let's just prove it. And say, he who writes your books sets your timeline. Okay? Now we know in the Gregorian year it's 1 BC. If it's 1 BC in the Gregorian year and Gregorian calendar get created in 1582, ain't no way in hell it's 1 BC. Okay? There's no way in hell it's 1 BC. 23rd. Well said, Brother Cornier. Hands off to you, brother. Hands off to you, Brother Cornier. You pay attention. So in 753 BC, it's the 23rd dynasty, which is actually Berbers. Okay? All right? And it's the founding of the city for them is actually 1 BC, which still means Berber calendar. We are already existing in that year. But in the new year that they use in the Gregorian calendar, now the new date is 198. Okay? When in all actuality, the year is 753, but because of their institution of the Gregorian calendar, we got to tell time by their chart. All right? So in 753 BC, all right, it's the time of creation of the world. Let's look. No, I'm parting stuff. 753 BC, the Berbers are already existing. That's the 23rd dynasty. All right? Libyan Berbers. You're welcome, Cornier. Libyan Berbers existed in 753 BC. All right? And we know Rome was created in 753 BC as well. Romulus and Remus, right here. The founding of the city of Rome. So that means when Rome was founded, we already existed on the calendar. All right? We already existed on the calendar. Rome invaded the territory which we already existed because we had our calendar. Okay? So now let's go to 1 BC, the founding of Rome, going back to Romulus and Remus. Okay? Let's see it. 1 BC. Our calendar still remains the same, 753 BC, the 23rd dynasty, but yet because of the institution of the Gregorian calendar that didn't come until 1583, we have to change our time. So now the year is 950, all right? 950 BC, because it's still BC, all right? But in actuality, it's AD, because if you move from 951 to 951, it will be AD, because 1 BC, the next year after that will be year 0. All right? Then you go to 1 AD, Annos Dominius, which means it will be in the year of their Lord. What is the year of their Lord? Religion. While Rome is coming to an existence with Romulus and Remus, Jesus Christ is being born. Okay? In what year? Somewhere around around 943, because King Edgar the Peaceful, as we read in the book, was the same age as Jesus when he started his ministry. All right? So estimated birth of Jesus in the Christian religion as assigned by Dionysius Exiguus is Annos Dominius, which means in the year of our Lord. Annos Dominius. According to the most scholars, Dionysius used the word incarnation. All right? Personification, but it's not known whether he meant conception of birth. However, at least one scholar thinks Dionysius placed the incarnation of Jesus in the next year, 1 AD. 1 AD is Annos Dominius versus 1 BC before Christ. So be Christ before Christ means Christ ain't here. So the only way we can use the word BC, it means Berber calendar, but Christ was in fact a Berber. How we know that? Because when you go 1 BC to 1 AD, the year was switched from 950 to 951. Let's see if the year switched from 1 BC, which is in the Berber year 950. When we go to 1 AD, the year will still be in the Berber calendar, 951. Let's see. Right? Because Jesus is born in that year. All right? He's born in 1 AD. All right? 1 BC, 1 AD, and we know that Berbers are still around. Okay? So let's go to 1 AD. 1 AD. Look at the year. 950 BC to 950 AD. It went from BC to AD, but the date of the year never changed for the Berber. It went from 950 to 951. Do you see an English read now year on this calendar? No. Okay? Now we know we gods. Why? Because in 950, why Anglo-Saxons are on the planet, And we know that Berbers, we got a king on the planet because King Edgar the Peaceful had kings prior to him. He became king in 959. So that means the only king that could be king at that time is his son, Ethelred the Unready. Parts of Edmund. Eachred. Because Eachred and Edgar were brothers. They were the sons of Edmund the First. Okay? So prior to King Edgar becoming king, Eachred was the king. Okay? And before Eachred became the king, their uncle was king because they were too young to come into that position. So we see here at 951 AD, Annos Dominius, in the year of our Lord, that means Lord was there on that earth. All right? Some Lord was there on that earth. All right? In the year 951, there is no English reading our year, but yet the calendar year for the Hebrew year is 3761 to 3762. If we go back here to the 6,000 year of the return of the Messiah, it clearly says, according to tradition, the Hebrew calendar starts at the time of creation, placed in 3761 BCE. All right? Let's go back to 1 AD and go back 1 year, BC. Well, that's awesome. Okay. So 950 AD is 951. 950 BC is 1 BC. So 1 BC is 950 and 1 AD is 951. Okay? Very, very important for you to understand that. All right? 950 BC is 1 BC. 951 AD is 1 AD. All right, and we know that it can't be 1 AD or 1 BC because the Gregorian calendar was not created to what? 1582. Okay, so somebody has been lying to you, brothers and sisters. All right, very important. And we know that in 1 BC, right? Let's go to 1 BC. 1 BC, it's the creation of the world. All right. So that means that if 1 BC is the creation of the world, that means that whoever existed under that Berber counter must be the gods. Hebrew creation. All right. Hebrew creation. If you go back to the 6,000 year, going to the classical Jewish source, Hebrew year marks the latest time for the initiation of the Messiah age for the 6,000 year return. So 6,000 years started at the time of creation, which was 3761. Going to the tradition, Hebrew calendar starts at the time of creation, placing at 3761 BC. So that means in the Gregorian year is 3761 BC, but in the Berber year, the actual year is what we call 950. And 950, King Edgar the people was there, and that is our Jesus Christ. Okay. Then it said that from that day, and when we get to the Lord's Prayer, our Father was out in heaven. He's in heaven now. He's in the state of existence that's not physical anymore. And through the reincarnation, through the understanding of that king's consciousness, he was able to personify in this day and time through me. In what year? The year 2024. Because the year 2024 represents the age of the Messiah, the return of that king. All right? 2025. The current year 2024, 2025 Hebrew year is 5784. Okay? Once again, the current 24 or 2025 Hebrew year is the 5785 year. By this calculation, the start of 6,000 year will occur at nightfall the 29th September of 2239. Once again, and the end will occur at nightfall of September 7th, 2240 on the Gregorian calendar. We don't have to even use that calculation. We're just going to go to the year 2024. And in the year 2024, and the Hebrew year will be the year 5785. If you add, or multiply, if you added 3761, all right, with 50, let me get it right. If you added 3761 with 2024, you would get 6,000 years. Okay, let me just add it up. 3761 plus 2024 equals 5785. 5785. Everybody get a calculator up. Add up 3761 in the year 2024, and you get 5785. Everybody do it right now. If you add 2024 with 3761, you come up with 5785. All right? Now just look up 2024. AD, Annos Dominios, the year of our Lord. You make this up. Well said, Brother Cornier. Okay, here we go. 2024. And the Berber year, what year is it? 2974. That's what we say. The reigning monarch is who? Charles III. All right? Charles III. Now you don't even have an English speak now yet. Now you got a British speak now yet. All right? They don't even have an English speak now yet. So you know they ain't English because it says British here. All right? But yet you have a Berber. And we know English did not start till William the Conqueror. So prior to the British and the William the Conqueror, the only people that were here is Berbers. And we know the Berbers calendar go all the way back to 753 BC. Okay? We must comprehend. Now let's look in the Hebrew year. 5784, 5785. Right there. So that would mean you're at the age, you're in the year of the Messiah. You're in the age of the Messiah, the day in which the Messiah would return. That is now. I am the return of the Messiah. We must comprehend that, brothers and sisters. We must comprehend that. Why is that important? Okay? Why is that important? Let's see where I'm at. Where am I? Okay, let's start here. Louis VII of France. Louis VII of France, called the younger of young to differentiate him from his father Louis VI, was king of France from 1137 to 1180. He was to Duchess of Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the wealthiest, most powerful women in Western Europe. The marriage typically extended the Capitale lands to Pyrenees. You hear that? Okay. Louis VII authorized what's his name, Maurice de Sully, to construct Notre Dame's cathedral. Okay, and it was named in honor of Queen Mary, not Queen Mary, Mary, Mother of Jesus. There was another monastery built in France as well, constructed in the time of Henry II, and all the kings of Wessex were buried in that. All right, including Henry II. Let's see. Fontenoy Abbey. All right. Fontenoy Abbey or Notre Dame Abbey. Very important. Why? Because people associated with this abbey was Henry II, Eleanor of Aquitaine, and Richard Lionheart. We know Richard Lionheart and Henry II were the sons of Godfrey, the fifth Calabrian Jew, the son of Fulk, the ruler of Jerusalem. Okay? The ruler of Jerusalem. So if that's the case, that means that we have to correct our status, which is determined under the English common law, based upon our actions and our behavior. All right, because we know based upon the opening of this lesson, they already classified you as prisoners of war, based upon the standard ID. All right, so all your prayers are in vain. All right, by not knowing the origin of your prayer and where your prayers are going. All right, you need to understand that. All right, because your salvation is near. Your very salvation is near. Where we at? Let's go here. Establishment Clause. In the United States, the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to the United States, together with the Amendment Free Clause exercise of freedom of religion, the clause states that no one should make any law respecting the establishment of religion. Okay, no one should make laws establishing religion. This is based upon the presence of a number of presidents, including the Constitution of Clarendon, the Bill of Rights of 1689, the Articles of Confederation, as well as Pennsylvania and New Jersey's Constitution. All right? The Clarendon Constitution is what we look for in lieu of our rights as a religious society. You know, because we know that the Clarendon Constitution goes back to the laws created by our ancestors, all right, which originated as a result of the anarchy. How we know it? Let's see in closing. Constitution of Clarendon. The Constitution of Clarendon was a set of legislative procedures passed by who? Henry II of England. Henry II was married to Eleanor of Aquitaine. We know that Henry II was born with the Capitale Plantagenet dynasty, who? Louis VII. Okay? Once again, Louis VII and Henry II had a conflict which was called the 100-Year War. Okay? The 100-Year War. So we know that citizenship here in North America under New Jersey Revised Statute 39:3.29-3, it clearly says that now you have been registered as a family associated with veterans of war. Okay? We're not members of their family associated with war. If there was a war, then we must go back to our original family, and that's the family originated before the conflict originated. All right? We must understand. The Constitution of Clarendon was a set of legislative procedures passed by Henry II of England in 1164. The Constitution was composed of 16 articles and represented an attempt to restrict ecclesiastical privileges and curb the powers of the church courts and to extend papal authority in England. Now we see what's going on with the ceremonial happening in what we call Notre Dame Cathedral, all right? And we understand who built that cathedral. Maurice de Sully, and he was working for who? Henry the Seventh. All right, and we know that there was another monastery or abbey created in Notre Dame, which was go back to our ancestors, Henry the Second, son of Godfrey the Fifth, Count of Anjou, which is where the original ceremony took its root from, because it was based upon the hymn Te Deum, and Te Deum goes back to the ceremonial consecration of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is none other than King Edgar the Peaceful, which is associated with Christ 1, Christ 2, Christ 3, the Last Judgment, which were books created in the extra books, going back to what we call the Wessex Gospels, okay? Illuminated manuscripts that were left by our ancestors, all right? So we understand that the Clarendon Constitution, which was act passed as a result of what we call anarchic conditions, which was a breakdown in the civil standards of how our government actually ran, which was religiously intact. All right, that goes back to what we call the English Benedictine Reform. Once again, the English Benedictine Reform. We must understand that. So, in closing, let's see. The 100-Year War. Remember, war. The First 100-Year War was a series of conflicts and disputes during the High Middle Ages in which the House of Capet, rulers of the Kingdom of France, fought the House of Plantagenet, also known as the House of Anjou, or the Angevin rulers of the Kingdom of England. Did you hear that? Look at the belligerents. Louis VII and Henry II. You hear that? Louis VII and Henry II. So if Louis VII were warring with Henry II, and Louis VII was a Frankish king, and Henry II was an English and French king, then we must understand that based upon the ceremonial that was done in Notre Dame, all right, dealing with the reopening of Notre Dame, which was built by who? Maurice de Sully. Maurice de Sully worked for who? Louis VII of France. All right. Maurice de Sully was in conflict with Henry II of England. So all the ceremonial consecrations that's going back that you see practiced by um, uh, uh, those overseers today, especially the ceremony that was done with Notre Dame Cathedral, are done by conspirators to take your rightful estate from you through the ceremonial practices that were preserved by our ancestors of the Plantagenet crown, okay, which are now being emphasized through the recreation of our church, i.e., the English church, known now today in this present time as the Third Temple English Church of England. All right, we must comprehend that. This is the only way that you can be registered back to your true family. Because if you don't register with your family, then you're registered with the family by way of being prisoner of wars. Okay? Prisoners of war. We're going to close out with the statue. Right? This is why, in either case that's presented, the case in Chancery Court or the criminal case that's about to be dismissed, it's all because of this statute. Okay? This statute opens the door for their downfall, okay? For their downfall. And we're going to read it in closing. This right here, let me just pull this up right here, too. The public record. So y'all better pray, brothers and sisters. Y'all better pray. Pray to me. All right? Because that's who you pray to. The Lord's Prayer originated through the English Benedictine Reform under King Edward the Peaceful. Okay? You must comprehend that. We know the 14th Amendment establishes that those who are emancipated by the 14th Amendment, 13th Amendment, citizenship should be interpreted in light of the English common law. Okay? Very important. So these two statutes are going to determine if you are in fact an heir and a citizen here in what we now call England. And prior to being called in North America or America, this was in fact England. I'm going to prove it in closing. All right? You must understand this. The New Jersey statute legislative finds and declares legislative fine declares it to be the public policy of the state that government records should be readily accessed for inspection, copying, or examination by a citizen of the state, with certain exceptions for the protection of the public interest and any limitation on the right of access according to 47:1A-1. Okay? So if you are in fact a citizen, okay, it must be on the public record. All government records shall be subject to public access unless exempt from such access, as amended and supplemented. Any other statute limitation, parts of any other statute resolution of either both houses of legislature, regulation promulgated under the authority of any state or executive order of the governor, executive order of the governor, rules of the court, or any federal law, federal regulation, or federal order. A public agency has a responsibility. You hear that? Responsibility and a obligation to safeguard from the public access a citizen's personal information with which it has been entrusted with when disclosure thereof would violate the citizen's reasonable expectation of privacy, and not to contain as amended and supplemented to be construed as affecting in any way the common law right of access to any record, including but not limited to criminal investigatory records of law enforcement agencies. So you see, under the public record, all citizens have the right to examine the record if they are in fact on the record, filed for the record as a citizen under the common law of England. That law is protected, and no one who works for the government has a right to discriminate against you because they were entrusted with that right to protect your expectancy of privacy. All right? That's what the statute says. But as a result of this statute, New Jersey Revised Statute 39:3 39, what's the New Jersey Revised Statute, colon 39.29, that, one second. New Jersey Revised Statute 39, colon 29.3 dash, I'm keep saying it wrong, I'm going too fast. New Jersey Revised Statute 39, colon 29.3.29, no. New Jersey Revised Statute 39, colon 29.29, no, I keep saying it wrong. New Jersey Revised Statute 39:29 -29.3. Okay. That's the statute in which they're keeping us enslaved. Let's do that before I close out. Okay, this one. 39:3 points up. I said it wrong. 39:3.29, 39:3-29.3. Motor vehicle identification cards. Okay? Very important. In closing, you're welcome, Brother Cornier from the House of Cornier. Now, it says you have a right as a citizen to the public record. You have the right as a citizen to examine the public record. You have a right to the citizen, as a citizen, that all those who work for the state, whether it's the House or the Senate, the federal government, state government, rules of the court, state agencies are entrusted with the protection of the expectancy of your privacy right. To not protect that privacy right is an invasion of your privacy, which results in what we call a malicious prosecution. Okay? We know the malicious prosecution is based upon brought into a false light, misappropriation of name and likeness, and other forms of trespass as well. All right? So it clearly says here, any document All right. And personal information, including the applicant's photograph, obtained by the commission for applicant for a standard identification card, shall be confidential and not to be considered a government record pursuant to the public record. Okay? So any instrument that the state give you is not to be associated with the public record, as we just read under 47:1A-1. All right. So if it's not associated with the public record, it's not associated with the common law, and therefore you got no protection. Because it said, and I repeat, any document, personal information, including an applicant photograph obtained by the commission from an applicant, i.e. you, filling out the applications for a standard identification card, should be confidential and should not be considered a government record pursuant to the public record or the common law concerning access to government records and should not be disclosed by the commission for any purpose related to Title 8 of the United States Code. Title 8 deals with nationality, nationals, and aliens, okay? It deals with if you are a citizen or if you are in fact a naturalized citizen or in fact a resident, okay? Title 8. So that means that the standard ID for a motor vehicle is not associated with the public record under 47:1A-1, nor is it associated with Title 8 of the United States Code, nor is it associated with the laws that govern under the common law of England. And it clearly says here that or the common law concern access to the government record and should not be disclosed by the commission for any purpose related to Title 8 of the United States Code without the informed consent of you, the applicant, or a warrant signed by a state or federal judge or a lawful court order or subpoena, except to nothing in this section should be construed to prohibit or any way restrict any action which such prohibition or restriction will be contrary to the federal law, and except that information under subsection may be shared in accordance with subsection 2 of citation 39:2-3.9 when responding to a warrant, court order, or subpoena. So when they're using it for that purpose intent, they can use your personal information. Why? Because it's subject to 39:3-29.3. Make sure I had it right again. 39:29.3-29.3, which is the statute governing the motor vehicle statute or the identification card which you receive that 9 times out of 10, majority you have in your pocket. Okay? So as just said, that instrument you got in your pocket is not associated with the public record, nor is it associated with the common law of England, nor is it associated with Title 8. All right? That deals with the status of citizens, whether you're a national, foreign national, whether you're born on the soil, just or of blood. All right? Why? They're going to tell you why. Possession of the standard identification card issued pursuant to this section should not be considered evidence of an individual's citizenship or immigration status as defined by Title 8 of the United States Code, nor should it be used as any basis of investigation, arrest, citation, prosecution, or detention for a real citizen. But if you use it for the purpose of motor vehicle citations or motor vehicles driving or motor vehicle identifying, then that means that you can be arrested, cited, investigated, prosecuted, and detained because that's what they use to detain you. All right? And all that is because of what the commissioners now have done. What did they do? Section 2. In addition to the requirement for the form and content of the identification card that you have in your pocket, as well as the driver license, as well as the driving permit, as well as the birth certificate, as well as any other instrument given to you, which has nothing to do with the public record, okay? The public record, you have the right to examine the public record because they were entrusted with the public record to protect the identity of your privacy. But if it's not on the public record, they got the right to violate your privacy right, all right? Because it's already declared who you are. All right. So it said, in addition to the requirement for the form and content of the identification card pursuant to the title section, the Chief Administrator of New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commissioner shall, upon submission of the statutory proof, designate on the identification card that the cardholder is a Gold Star family member. Okay. So it just said that it was supposed to be private. Okay. But yet, when you filled it out, they have now transferred that information to the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, and now associated with a family called the Gold Star family under the Real ID Act that was started in 2017 and now ended in 2025. Okay, so that means that if you go out down there and fill out that national that ID under the Real ID Act, They have now registered you with the family. You are now a prisoner of war. If you don't fill it out, you are still a prisoner of war because that's the standard ID that they give you to identify you. Okay? How I know it? Let's read it. For the purpose of this section concerning the identification card given you for motor vehicle through the Motor Vehicle Commission, the Gold Star family member means a spouse, domestic partner, partner in civil union, parent, brother, sister, child, legal guardian, or other legal custodian, whether or whole or half blood or by adoption, of a member of the armed forces of the United States or National Guard who lost his or her life while on active duty for the United States. So every war that the United States had with any other party that had their so-called belligerents associated with that war, they're now telling you that you didn't have no connection to them. All right, you are a prisoner of war by way of registering with the state under the Real ID Act, and now you have considered part of the family. If you don't have that gold star on that ID, then there is no ceremonial conditions set forth for you to be, in fact, a member of that Gold Star family. Okay? And if that is the case, then you must establish what family you are. Whether you are half blood, whether you are a family by adoption, whether you are some type of legal custodian, legal guardianship, or whether you are, in fact, by blood, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, etc. Okay? You must establish that now for yourself, for Donald Trump decided for you. Okay? You must understand that. All right. So with that, let me make sure I covered everything. I have more to talk about, but I'm going to cut it short. I think I covered the most important aspects of today. All right. So with that, I'm going to stop and share my screen. And once again, I'm going to thank Brother Cornier for showing up today, as well as anybody else who gets the opportunity to watch this lecture and realize that your status is being determined for you if you haven't determined it yourself. All right. Our status as Englishmen was determined by what the Supreme Court said should be determined by, and that's in light of the English common law of England. If anybody else is determining your citizenship based upon naturalization, immigration, or residency, then that process is suspect to be amended, okay, annulled by Donald Trump, by Donald Trump, all right? If you are in fact a national and have not gone through the national customary ceremonial process that were established, that were addressed today in this lecture, then there was no renunciation ceremony that took place to renounce you from your permanent allegiance to the crown, okay? There was no process established, and therefore you must be protected by the common law of England. And that law of the common law of England is resurrected through me, i.e., the king of the common law. And with that, I greeted you as I meted you in peace.